Hello Retro Gamers and welcome back to Retro Game On. Today we're checking out Wario Land 2 for the Game Boy. Can you even see that? Hey, zoom in a bit. Excellent. Wario Land 2 was developed and published by R&D 1, being released in 1998. It's notable because it was the very last first-party title released on the Game Boy. It was later released on the Game Boy Color with upgraded graphics a year later. Don't let the color graphics in this video fool you though, as the original Game Boy version is enhanced when played through the Super Game Boy and the Game Boy Color. The gameplay between the two versions is exactly the same though as far as I can tell, so if you own the Game Boy Color version instead, then I'm sure this review will still apply to you. So yeah, please don't click away. Now I've never played the original Wario Land, so I'm missing a few pieces when it comes to the general lore of the Wario games. At the start of Wario Land 2 though, Captain Syrup and a few of her goons break into Wario's castle and proceed to steal his treasure, but then activate a bloody alarm clock and then turn on a giant tap which floods everything. Now, I'm not sure what their personal history is, but bloody hell that's childish. Stealing the treasure is one thing, but all the other antics sound like they belong in Animal House. Anyway, no matter what's going on between Wario and Captain Syrup, which let's face it, leaves me wondering a lot, Wario must rescue his beloved treasure, and so the game begins. When you think about Wario games, you may consider a compilation of mini-games. Those games are actually the WarioWare series though, and just about any game that has both Wario and Land in the title are actually platformers. Having said that though, Wario Land 2 is actually quite different from its Mario platformer counterparts, as this game relies more on puzzle solving than platforming skill. For one, you can't actually die. This is a bit of a shame really, as it doesn't make the game challenging at all, although every time you're attacked you will lose coins, which can be collected around the levels. The more coins you have, the bigger the thumbs up Wario will give you at the end of every level, but these can also be spent playing a few mini-games. One is a number guessing game, where panels cost 50 coins each to be removed, eventually revealing a number. Each correct guess of a hidden number goes towards a piece of a painting, which will show a map of where pirate treasure can be obtained. It will take you several playthroughs of all the levels to complete the picture though. The second mini-game can be found within the levels and will have you matching pictures of enemies. Depending on how many coins you want to spend, the panels will show for a longer period, making it easier. A correct guess will win you a piece of treasure, but the pictures honestly don't show for long at all, so I very rarely won. Maybe I just suck, I don't know. Fun fact, if you're playing the Virtual Console version, you can cheat at this minigame by opening the Virtual Console's menu at the exact right time, which will pause the action. Suck it, Nintendo! The general platforming aspects of the gameplay are what you would expect for the most part. Wario can jump, he can swim, boost in a direction while swimming, and also has a run and punch style attack. What keeps this game interesting, however, is the different states Wario can enter. All of these states can be entered by certain enemy attacks, whether you want to or not. This adds an element of strategy to the gameplay which I didn't expect, as you have to decide on the fly whether to kill an enemy or not, or to then gain their coins, or use the state that they offer. Killing an enemy when you need its state may hamper the ability to progress or to enter special areas, so playing with caution is advised. There are also certain walls and barriers that can only be knocked down by throwing a certain enemy at it too, so this game requires a fair bit of forethought. Fat Wario is a state activated by a piece of cake being thrown into Wario's mouth, which makes our rather round protagonist, rounder. He moves slower during this period but can easily fall through weak floor tiles. Hot Wario is activated by a Charizard-like enemy which will set Wario alight. He runs around almost uncontrollably, which you'd expect since he's on fire, but after a while he'll be on fire even more, meaning he can smash through certain wall types. Zombie Wario turns him into a slow hungover-like mess, but he can also fall through floors, so it's very much like the Fat Wario state. Puffy Wario will make his head swell up like a balloon after being stung, and he'll also float upwards like the balloon he represents until he hits a ceiling. Tiny Wario will transform Wario into a smaller version of himself and can be used to traverse more cramped areas. Bouncy Wario should sound fairly self-explanatory, and lastly there's Crazy Wario, which I must say doesn't make him very crazy at all. If anything, he just acts like a drunkard, and there's a very good reason for this. In the Japanese version, penguins throw beer instead, and he acts in the exact same way as Crazy Wario, a useless state which has Wario stumbling around until he falls into a body of water sobering him up. Nintendo obviously thought all power and NTSC demographs are delicate flower petals, and changed it. There are a few other mechanics introduced as you play besides from the different states as well. At some points you can be crushed, meaning you walk around flat as a pancake until some magical water drips onto you. In some water levels, there are bubbles which can be floated around in, both helping but hampering the player since they're so hard to control. There are also owls scattered around that can be rudely awakened and hung onto as they fly around. Thank you, owl bro! There is also plenty of boss fights throughout the game too, which are cool. Although since Wario can't die, instead the boss will simply throw you out of their little boss area and you have to travel back in to try again. The good news is that most bosses aren't too tricky to beat, usually achieved by jumping on a certain part of their body at a certain time. Wario Land 2 has a certain air of replayability to it as well, since once you've completed the game the first time, you're given access to a map of all the game's levels. This is because the game actually has multiple endings, so that's nice. A branching storyline certainly isn't expected for a Game Boy game, at least not in my opinion anyway. The saving system is fairly well implemented too. It will auto-save at the end of every successfully completed level, but you can also save in excess whenever you darn well feel like it. Although when I did this, it just went to the start of the level on the next play anyway, so I'm not totally sure what this achieves. The only downfall is that there is only one slot for saving, but hey, since I've had a bad run of games that can only be progressed with a password system lately, I'm not going to whine about it too much. I should be grateful even. There is a fair amount of detail crammed into the Game Boy's cartridge, with most of the levels looking vastly different to each other. The enemies and NPCs are brimming with character too, making this quite a nice looking game. While in black and white when played on the original Game Boy, playing on the Super Game Boy doesn't add too much colour. In fact, all it really does is overlay a shade of the specific colour on each level, so while not adding too much to the graphics representation overall, it is at least used tastefully. When also playing on the Super Game Boy 2, custom overlays will show that change each level. These are quite detailed, but unfortunately this actually becomes a negative as they're so busy they become distracting. Most of my playtime was spent with this feature turned off. There are cutscenes in Wario Land 2 as well, which are short and humorous. It's kinda lame they can't be skipped though, and since they play at the start of a level, but after the automatic save from the previous level, it means that if you have to start a certain level multiple times from boot, you have to endure the unskippable cutscene too. The music is easily a standout when representation is considered in Wario Land 2 though, with plenty of differing tunes crammed in to complement the gameplay and the graphics. It will also actively change from screen to screen as well, and also when states are activated. This keeps the gameplay going at a reasonable and comfortable pace, and is always a feature I'll welcome. Wario Land 2 isn't exactly a long game when played the first time since it's so easy, but considering the going price, I'd say this is not too unfair. The branching storyline should keep you engaged if you like it enough too, and the extra gameplay should add at least another couple of hours onto the gameplay. So all in all, even though there is only one save spot and no ability to die, this game is still fun enough to be considered. I think it would be an enjoyable breather game to play difficulty-wise before you transition onto something of a more traditional hardness. Hello retro gaming people, and thank you so much for watching. The question of the day today is, what's your favourite Nintendo series besides from the big guns like Mario or Donkey Kong? Maybe you're a fan of the WarioWare titles, or have always enjoyed the Kirby games. Whatever the answer may be, let me know in the comments section below. This week on RetroGameOn.com I visited a new retro gaming store in Perth called Retro Levels. I wrote about my experience and what I bought, so if you're interested in that, click on the Retro Game On symbol within this video or follow the link in the description box. Anyway, thank you again so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.